tides are created is by the relationship of the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon together. So the Sun and the Moon both exert a gravitational pull on the Earth. So in the case of what we call a neap tide, we have the Sun, the Earth, and the Moon in 90-degree angles to each other. In one case, you might have your first quarter moon or your third quarter moon. So the side that's facing the Sun is the side that's lit up that you see. The side that's facing away is the side that's dark. And what happens is you have a bulge of water that gets pulled toward the Sun. A little bulge of water gets left behind on the other side of the Earth. And then there's a bulge of water that gets pulled toward the Moon, and a little bulge that gets left on the other side of the Earth. And so what ends up happening is you end up getting tides that are fairly even. You don't get a large tidal swing, super highs or super lows. They're pretty mellow tides. The alternative are spring tides. Now, spring tides don't only happen in the spring. It's kind of a misnomer. But what happens is with the spring tide, you have the Sun, the Moon, and the Earth all in straight lines with each other. So you get spring tides when you either have a new moon, that's when the moon is between the Earth and the Sun, so you don't see the moon, or when you have a full moon, when you have the Sun, the Earth, and the moon lined up, and so you see the full side of the moon lit up. And what happens in this case is you get water gets pulled toward the moon, and water gets pulled toward the Sun, and so you end up getting these two large bulges on either side of the Earth. And in between, there's not as much water left. So you get very high highs and very low lows. Now, depending on where those high and low tides fall, whether it's during the daytime or at night, depends on whether you're going to go visit the tide pools. So this time of year, December, January, February, here in California, is a really good time to go and visit the tide pools with super low tides in the negative range. And then that way, we can go and see all of the animals that would normally be covered by the ocean. So one thing we have to be really mindful of as we're walking through the tide pools is safety. And first of all, safety for ourselves, that we're not slipping as we're going through the tide pools, but also safety for the animals. We want to be really respectful that we're not harming the animals. So we have to watch where we place our feet. Part of that means we have to recognize what are animals and what are not. So we talked about these aggregating anemones. So we want to be careful not to step on these patches that look like shells, because those are actually animals underneath there. But whenever you see green algae, that tends to be really slippery. So you want to be careful where you put your feet. One of the rules that I tend to follow when I'm going through the tide pools, of course I try not to step on any animals, but I always try and take the low road if I can. A lot of people want to climb up high on the rocks, but the higher you are, that means the longer you have to fall and get hurt if you should slip and fall. So if you stay low, at least you've got less distance that you're going to end up falling. And as you walk, just kind of plan out your path as you head out before you actually head out through the tide pools. And if you do that carefully, then you're going to have less chance of getting hurt. You're going to have less chance of harming an animal. There is one other thing that's kind of tricky. If you're in a tide pool like this that has surf grass, and we'll see some surf grass in a moment, be very aware of the surf grass, because sometimes as the tide goes out, it leaves the surf grass kind of laying along all in one angle, and there could be a pool underneath the surf grass that you don't see. I know this from experience. I have actually stepped in a pool, fallen down on my butt, gotten all wet, really embarrassing. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So you just have to really be aware and kind of test where you're putting your feet before you actually commit. So we're going to just head our way through, and we're going to be really, really careful where we step. So we've already found our first interesting critter here. This is a giant snail named Astrea. You can see there's the snail, and since I plucked him up, he's going to kind of tuck himself back in, and he's actually got a really cool little piece on him called an operculum that he uses to kind of slam the door behind himself, so that if he does pull himself in, he can kind of seal himself up. It's like closing the garage door after you pull in. And so this guy, you'll notice, has a variety of animals growing and plants growing all over him. I've got a little shrimp right here, mostly clear. We've got a couple of smaller snails right here. And we've got a variety of different algae growing on this snail. Typically when you have an organism that's very slow moving, like a snail or a crab, you'll find things growing on them. And if we take a look right in there, that little ridge there, that's that operculum I was talking about. So these guys are really cool. Now we remember, when we go to a tide pool, we want to make sure that if we do handle an animal or we flip a rock, we do so carefully, we put it right back where we found it, and we don't take these home. Because even if this shell was empty, I might be tempted to take it home, but another animal could actually make a home out of it. And even if the shell is so busted up you think, oh, nobody could ever live in that, actually the chemicals that made the shell come from the ocean. And so as the shell gets broken down, those chemicals go back to the ocean and then can then be recycled and used by another organism when they're making their own shell. So as nice as it is to kind of take that shell home, stick it on your shelf, it's a lot nicer to leave it here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy back, and we are gonna leave him in this little tide pool so he can be happy. So we've barely even gotten out into the tide pools, and already we're seeing a ton of cool stuff. All of this that just looks like shells and detritus, these are actually what we call aggregating anemones. And so these guys are just hundreds, thousands of anemones covering these rocks. And if you ever put your hand on it by accident, you may notice, oops, all of a sudden it gushes water, squirts water all over the place. That's one of the things that they do to kind of say, hey, wait a second, there's a critter here. Now, a close cousin of these anemones are these guys here. So these are also sea anemones. Anemones are cnidarians. That means they're stinging-celled animals. These guys are related to jellyfish and corals and things like that. Lucky for us, when we touch them, it doesn't hurt, but you may feel it feels a little sticky. You can see it's kind of grabbing onto me. Well, its stinging cells are trying desperately to sting me and to pull me in toward his mouth in the center of his body. My skin's too thick for him to get down to my nerves, so I don't feel any pain, but I can feel that stickiness. The mouth is in the very center of the anemone, right in there, and they've only got one body opening, which means everything that goes in there also comes out there as waste. So they'll take that food, they'll pull it in toward the center, kind of bundle themselves up like that, they'll digest it in that central vascular, gastrovascular cavity is what that's called, or GVC, and then they'll just spit out the waste, whatever's left over, whatever else they can't digest. Through these pools, we also see a ton of hermit crabs. So as you look around, you can see lots of these things that look like snails, but they're actually hermit crabs borrowing snail shells. Wow, we've got a big wave coming in right now. We're trying to stay dry. Wow, and there's a couple more right behind it. So these are hermit crabs. They won't hurt you. Their claws are really small. These are blue-banded hermit crabs. He's being a little shy. He's pulling himself back in. The best way to get one of these guys to walk across your hand is when you find a pool to actually stick them on your hand underneath the water. And they'll get comfortable after a little bit and stick their little legs out and start walking. But you can see the variety of crabs that we have. There are so many in this one little pool, and the variety of sizes. So a hermit crab, as it gets bigger, will move into a bigger shell, and they'll actually measure out the shell, and then they'll move into that shell. And the reason why they use the shells is their back half of their body, their abdomen, is soft, and so they need the shell to actually protect that soft abdomen. So you can see the hermit crab is kind of walking across my fingers right now. He says, I'm out of here. So there he goes. Little blue-banded hermit crab. As we continue to look around on these rocks, You can start to see other things too if you look really, really carefully. So you can see a variety of algae, like this brown algae here. Sometimes you see splashes of color that might be a tunicate. Sometimes we'll see sponges. So really the best thing to do when you go to the tide pools is find a quiet place and just sit and watch. And as you sit and watch, the regular lives of the inhabitants get revealed to you. And if we look on this rock that we're near right here, we can see all sorts of different animals in different layers here. So we can see the mussels up on top, all clustered on top, and spread out among the mussels are a variety of other creatures. So we've got barnacles attached to the mussels themselves, and in the middle of the mussels we have gooseneck barnacles, slightly different kind. As you move a little bit further down the rock and kind of underneath the ledge, we can start to see some sea stars clinging to the rocks. Now, the reason why we're going to find so many sea stars on this rock is because their favorite food is mussels. And so when you go near their food source, you're going to see lots of those creatures. The sea stars here at Carpinteria, and as a matter of fact, all up and down our coast, have what's called a sea star wasting disease. And basically what happens is they just kind of start rotting alive. Scientists are tracking it. They think it's part of a cycle. They're not sure why it's happening, but it's happening. So we're kind of watching it ourselves, and fingers crossed that the population rebounds. So right here we have a really special find. One of the scientists brought this over to me. This is Nerissia, a kelp snail. But this guy is huge compared to what we normally see. Normally when I see these guys, they're maybe about the size of a quarter. So this one is massive. You can see it's got a beautiful red foot. The foot is the part that they crawl around on. And right there, that's his face. He's looking at you. So that is a kelp snail. These guys are herbivores, meaning they eat plants. And as we're out in the tide pools in Carpinteria, or as you're walking around, you might notice patches of tar, or you might notice this kind of oily sheen on the water. And sometimes people see that and they think it's related to these oil rigs that we see out here, out toward the Channel Islands. But they're related, but not directly. There are natural tar seeps here at Carpinteria State Beach. And as a matter of fact, those tar seeps are the reason why the Chumash Indians had a village here. They actually had a village where they built their tumults, their plank canoes. And the asphalt was one of the steps in making these canoes, because they used them to actually help waterproof the canoes so that the water wouldn't seep in. And the Chumash would actually make a very long voyage from here all the way out to the Channel Islands, where they actually had villages out there. So we found another inhabitant of our tide pools over here. This is a whelk. And so you can see this is a beautiful shell. Again, something that somebody might want to take home and put on their shelf. But when we take a look at him, we can see it's actually a really beautiful snail. Look at that color. So he's bright yellow and he's got these black stripes. And right there, that's that operculum that we saw before on the Estrella snail. But just look at that. It's such a beautiful shell. But again, we're going to leave this guy in the tide pool so he can do his thing. Sorry, I picked you up there, buddy. But we're going to leave him there, and this little snail that hopped off him onto me. We're going to go see if we can find some more stuff. So over here we found another sea star, and he's actually on his favorite food. What's really cool about how a sea star eats is they have these little tube feet on the underside of their bodies. You might be able to see it there, kind of attached to the mussel. And what they'll do is they'll wrap themselves around a mussel and they'll pull on that mussel. And as soon as they get it open, just the tiniest little bit of a crack, maybe 1/4 of an inch, they can actually take their stomach and invert it through their mouth. Their stomach and their mouth is on the bottom side of their body. And they'll take their stomach and they'll just kind of invert it through their mouth, stick it into that little crack, and start digesting the animal inside of its own shell. And then once they've sucked everything out, then they'll just tuck their stomach back inside their bodies and move on to the next victim. So you can see a sea star will go through and just kind of pick off these mussels one by one. It's fascinating how these guys eat. If you can imagine sitting down at somewhere like McDonald's and eating a Big Mac that way, it's just awesome. So part of the basis of the food chain, in addition to the plankton that float around in the water, are actually going to be some of the algae and plants that we find. So if we take a look actually right down by my feet, we can see 3 different types of algae, and we can see a flowering plant. So right here is actually a frond from kelp, which is a brown algae. Here we have ulva, which is the green algae. These guys live the shallowest in the ocean. The brown algae can live a little bit deeper. And then we've got some red algae in here as well. And the red algae lives the deepest in the ocean. Now on top of that, we've also got this surf grass. And what's interesting about this is actually a flowering plant. So this is not an algae at all. This is what you find wrapped around your ankles when you're wading out in the ocean. And we've got a lot of this, and this is an example right behind me of one of these pools that may look like it's flat, but you look, and it's actually a fairly deep little pool. So that's why you have to be really careful as you're walking around through here, because you'll find yourself, hip deep in a pool before you know it if you don't pay attention. So right here we found a Pacific rock crab. I'm kind of watching him because he's being a little feisty, trying to defend himself. He thinks I want to eat him, which I don't. And we've got big waves coming in. But this is actually a small one compared to what I have found out here before. But I'm going to go ahead and put him back before he gives me a pinch I regret. You can find these guys in crevices, and you might have seen these on Real Anglers Fishing Show. Ow! They make good eating. Well, thanks for coming out and exploring the tide pools with us today. We've got so much energy in the water. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to explore too much because it is a little treacherous out here today. But today we're hoping it's going to be just part 1 in a series of many videos. So, check back with us. We're going to have more out here because we definitely want to show what amazing stuff we have out here at the tide pools. So thanks for coming. We'll see you again soon.
Welcome to Real Anglers Fishing Show. It's Kevin Brandon. Right here today on the Erna B out of Channel Island Sport Fishing. We're at the Captain's Secret spot. It's called a once-in-a-year spot. Look at these chokers we're catching. Some of the biggest I've ever caught. Anyway, right here today, it's really a treat for me because I have my professor from Oxnard College Television with me, and my senior editor, director, mentor, Miss Andrea Baltazar is with me as well. Their first time on a boat, they've already got a few fish in the sack. It's wide open out here. Again, we're on the Erna B out of Channel Island Sport Fishing at the Captain's Secret spot. He's called it his once-a-year spot. Loading up on these big chuckleheads. Look at that. Wow. With the Real Anglers Fishing Show. Let's go.
Solution in this time.
Get in there, Drea. Get over there.
That's awesome, man.
Alright. Look at you.
Yeah, girl.
That's your first drop. How is it?
It is. That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Here you go. Hold them up. Grab them. Grab your line. There you go. First time catching a fish on a boat?
Yep. Thank you, sir. 10, number 10.
Number 10. Okay. 10. How's your experience been so far?
Oh, it's awesome. Everybody should come out. Especially if you live nearby. No excuse, man. I should have done this years ago.
How many you catch so far?
Caught 3. Let me check my bag.
Well, you know, they live through it lots of times, but they can't, they don't get enough water.
3. It's gonna be good eating tonight.
Modern day solution in this time. Modern day disillusion in this time. Modern day disillusion in this time.
Steve.
Hey, get in there. Hold on. Hey, top of the world, Ma.
Andrea, you're normally behind the camera helping me. How's your day going so far?
Amazing. Great.
How many you catch?
I ate so far. I got 9 and 10.
Wow, look at that. So back up a little bit and grab the string. There you go. Now grab it. There you go. Put your rod down. Use both hands to bring up your string. There you go. Underneath. There you go. Just like that. Perfect. Bring him up and over. Don't lose him. Up and over. Oh, floater! Floater! Look at that. Look at that. Look at that action. Boy. Very nice. Yeah. Up and over. What you got there?
I don't know, a fish. A bird-ravaged fish.
I think you got the jackpot though. You can see it floating.
Well, at least they got one out.
Look at that.
Oh man, it's looking pretty nice. Yeah. Freaking monster. Got some competition there. Jesus.
Yeah. Give me a stick, Sean. No, you're fine. Stay right where you're at.
Woo!
Just keep doing what you're doing.
It is jackpot.
Woo!
Is that good?
Amber's the biggest one so far. Yeah.
She's the one that didn't want to get in.
She's the one who didn't want in, and I put money in for her.
There, so hold it right there.
Oh, hey, look at me.
Is that your biggest fish?
This is my only fish.
I'm here on Real Anglers, and can't thank the crew enough here on this boat, the Burnaby. Deckhand's been on it. I looked over and I saw all the bows, all the poles like bowed down and like bowing down to the ocean. And your host Kevin Brandon says, look at that sight. You don't see that sight every day. And it was impressive. Everybody caught a fish, and a big fish too. So it's just been a tremendous trip, fishing trip. It's 10:30 in the morning, and everybody's got their limit. It's, less than 2 hours. Awesome.
Oh yeah! Look at that. Got him wrapped up in there. Woo! Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
You took him in last shooting.
So folks, basically, this is how the fishing's been. Right here with Captain Mike at his once a year spot. It's been a double, what do you call it? Daily double today?
Everybody's a double.
Everybody's a double today. Nice lingcod, another chucklehead. So if they tell you December is wintertime, not in California, the fishing's always great.
Look at this thing.
Look at this.
There it is, hold them up. Wow.
I got this on the rim rod, the borrower. Out here with Captain Mike on the Erna B. Getting it done.
Nice.
Yes, sir. So we're going with the 10-ounce Ahi Assault jig here, single hook. Lingcod are biting. Put one little strip of squid on the bottom so they bite onto it. You hold on to it just long enough to set the hook in their face. Single hook, less likely to get caught in the rocks. 10 ounces, the ahi sole jig, drop it down. Big chuckleheads, big lingcod. The real anglers on the Pacific Islander.
Big enough.
Let's go. So got the ahi single hook on there. Strip. Let's see what we got. Just a baby gopher, but nonetheless.
He ate it.
He ate it. About 30 seconds on the bottom. Single hook. 10 ounce ahi jig. Single hook.
Put it in there for right now. Don't count your
Ahi sole jigs.
Well, Bill's squeezing the guitar and speaking, the piano plays a jelly roll. And then on the drum is broken, and the bass thing plays from the soul. The tables are quaking and your nerves are shaking, but you keep on begging for more. Keep having the fun, you let the sound down on a honky-tonk hardwood floor. On a honky-tonk hardwood floor. On a honky-tonk hardwood floor. Keep having the fun, you let the sound down on a honky-tonk hardwood floor. There's a waitress Henny, and she don't sell candy, she don't sell soda pop. There's a bartender who's there to serve you if you really want to go to top. And if you got no money, there's a little money, she's a gal that
Hey, it's Tim Campbell with Friends of Rollo, wanting to let you know that in June of this year, we're going to be at 100,000 kids taking fishing. That's right, we have taken 100,000 kids fishing in the 15 years we've been in existence. Come out, support Friends of Rollo, help us out with your donations, put kids on the water, and replenish all of those around us that love the sport we do. Go fishing. Thank you.
Saturday, you